First of all, thank you for the organizers, very professional and very nice to be here in Alicante, one of the main hubs for artificial intelligence here in Spain. Let me start with my presentation, say a little bit more where I'm coming from in my background. Let's see. So I'm a philosopher, but I'm a philosopher thinking about technologies, new and emerging technologies. In particular, first I thought about robotics and then artificial intelligence. In particular, I focused on the ethical problems of artificial intelligence, and more recently, especially looked at the political dimension of this and how to use political philosophy to think about the problems of artificial intelligence. There is also a translation of this book in Spanish for those of you who are interested, La Filosofía Política de la Inteligencia Artificial. And yeah, the reason why I went into this is that I saw that, okay, we talked already for years about AI ethics, but many of these ethical problems have a political dimension to it. Think about the problems about labor. Think about the problems about bias and discrimination, which is often connected to forms of bias and discrimination that are already present in a particular society. So I went more to the political dimension. Also, when I talk about generative AI, for example, issues related to job market. Imagine you're an artist, you're a writer, you're a journalist, and suddenly AI is there, generates also content, and you have to compete with people who use AI-generated content. Democracy is a theme that I want to focus on today. So in a book, you will see different kind of principles. I started with focusing more on freedom, and then today more about democracy. Democracy was a theme that was very much in news when there was the Cambridge Analytica case, which was a form of manipulation for political purposes. So it became clear that data analysis, AI, can be used for political manipulation, for pushing voters in a certain direction. This is done by micro-targeting them by making advertisements, especially for them, based on profiles. This is new because before in mass media we had messages that were directed at least big categories, groups of people. Now it's possible to target voters directly with artificial intelligence. So this is already one way that AI is used politically. But there's much more to say about AI and democracy. And there my background also in political philosophy came in, because I found that if we think about democracy, we have to, of course, as philosophers, we ask, what is democracy? What do we mean by democracy? And for me, democracy is, of course, partly something that we already do. Democracy is about voting. But democracy is also more. Democracy can also be about talking with one another, discussing, deliberating about common issues. It can be about participation of citizens. It can be even about the common good. So there are various ideas about democracy. The way I approach it now is to say, like, well, democracy is related to some principles, for example, freedom and equality, but also it needs some knowledge. Citizens need knowledge to discuss with one another and to participate in politics. And today in a complex society with advanced technologies, also politicians need expertise. So this brings interesting problems about what should be the balance between, on the one hand, democratic legitimacy, and on the other hand, the need for expertise. And so one extreme is to say that the experts should rule. This was Plato's solution to the problem already so many centuries ago. But we also have the very opposite would be to just say, like, well, the mass of people have to just vote, and then we get things, for example, like Brexit. So these are two extremes, and I don't think we want either extreme. We want a combination of expertise and democracy. But how to do it is a big challenge. Now, bring in artificial intelligence, and this raises these questions of democracy once again, and raises questions also about power, and that's what I want to talk about today. So how does AI impact democracy? Well, first of all, it impacts the principles of a liberal democracy that we have since the Enlightenment. One is that we want people to be free, but what is freedom? Well, one thing is that we want people to be protected somehow against interference by the state in all kinds of ways. There needs to be limits to state power. This affects their negative liberty. Negative liberty is about leave me alone, don't interfere with what I do. And absolute freedom is not possible. For example, you need to have some system that deals with crime. But you want, in a liberal democracy, you want some limits to state power. There, AI influences negative freedom in the sense that it can create a situation where surveillance is so good and where so much data analyzed with AI that the state increases its powers. But not only the state, also the private sector. So this is something to worry about. But in addition, with political philosophy, we can also have a notion of positive freedom, which is about, am I the person who decides about what I want? And there, AI also more and more allows to intervene in this through the manipulation of our desires, manipulation of our beliefs, manipulation of our choices. What is that? Well, a good way to think about that is, I have to click through. Let me try. Yeah. Think about you're in a supermarket and near the checkout of the supermarket there lies some chocolate. This is not just a coincidence that it lies there. It lies there so that you are influenced in your choices of what to buy. You went to the supermarket with a shopping list and you wanted to buy vegetables and you wanted to buy meat, for example, but you didn't think about chocolate. You didn't want chocolate at that time. When you're at the checkout, you see the chocolate and you want chocolate. So here you're manipulated. Your choices are influenced. This is a case of what we call nudging. And nudging uses not your deliberate way of reasoning about what you really want, but goes below that, circumvents your human autonomy and capacity for reasoning. So this is dangerous. On the other hand, it can also be used for good purposes. Imagine that we try to influence behavior in a more environmental direction by nudging people, for example, not to throw away plastic. So it is a complex issue, but it's for sure an ethical worry. Another important issue in our society is justice and equality, and there too AI impacts this in various ways. Think, for example, about facial recognition systems that are only recognize faces of people with white skin color, or court algorithms that are used for deciding whether someone should remain in prison or not in the US that were used and that were biased against people with a black skin color. So there are these kind of problems also in credit scoring, in also the welfare state, where AI is increasingly used to decide whether a person gets a certain benefit for living. So these are ways AI is used, and often then the idea is like, people say like, yeah, it's biased, AI is biased, AI discriminates. But to really make this claim, one has to also argue why this is. And then we get into a typical political philosophical issue, because then we have to make explicit what is it that we want, what kind of justice and fairness do we want in our society. And there are various ideas about this, and there are various approaches to this. So one can have, in political philosophy, the idea that you should do a thought experiment where you don't know in what position that you land in society, what would then be a fair society, or you can focus on what certain groups want, or you can focus on the capitalist system and whether that's something that is good. So there are various approaches there, but often we don't have these discussions. And I think political philosophy can help here with different theories. Then totalitarianism is another theme that is interesting to look at when we talk about democracy. So if we want to define what is democracy, one way to define this is to say, like, okay, what is democracy not? And then the issue is that, that AI can be used to support an authoritarian technocracy, that AI can be used to, for policymakers who say, like, we are going to use AI, for example, to calculate the welfare, and we no longer have humans making decisions about this. The problem with AI is that in the end it moves us to, if we don't set limits to it, it can move us to a totalitarian situation. Totalitarian state is a state that's not only authoritarian, where power is concentrated, but where also the state intervenes in the very small issues in your life. And this is possible with AI because if your data are analyzed, then the state or the company will know much more about you even than you yourself, because you have not always access to this analysis of your data. So again, a danger for democracy, big brother, big other, some call it. But what I'm mainly interested myself is the knowledge basis for democracy. So what kind of knowledge do citizens need? What kind of knowledge do policymakers need? And how does AI impact this? And here the problem is that misinformation and fake news, that the problem is not only that there is a particular lie or a particular way of distortion of truth at a certain moment. The problem is that we get a whole environment where we're no longer sure if the information on the internet is true or not. And so where there's a lot of confusion and where in the end there is more distrust in society. So this should be avoided somehow, and it's not so easy to deal with this given that we already have all these algorithms that produce misinformation, information that is not true, or that is basically bullshit information, right? Information that doesn't make sense. So this is a problem, the pollution of this infosphere. Another issue that I saw there in knowledge area is epistemic agency. You want people to form their own beliefs in a democracy. You want them to make up their own mind, to decide themselves which person they're going to vote for, what policy they find the best, what they think is best for society as a whole. And the problem is that with AI, we get these situations where there's not only fake news, but where, for example, there is also epistemic bubbles, that people talk only to other people who they agree with and are not exposed sufficiently to other views. And if that's not the case, then ideals like deliberative democracy, participative democracy become difficult. Because the Enlightenment idea of this was that people talk with one another and render their own beliefs vulnerable, criticize their own beliefs, question their own beliefs. The Kantian adagio that you have to think for yourself means not only just that you have your own opinion, but that you also critically question yourself, that you try to put yourself in the position of someone else, that you try to understand what the position is of other people, the other views, and discuss these views. And so this becomes very difficult when you have a situation where people stay in their own bubble and feel very good and comfortable with their views, but maybe too comfortable. And then democracy also doesn't work anymore. So one other way to frame these issues is also to say that we need to look at AI and power, right? So democracy is a particular way of organizing power. Now, here too, AI influences the way power is distributed in society. In particular, when it comes to what I call big power, there is an asymmetry between citizens and governments, once governments know much more through AI and experts than citizens. Think about the pandemic, for example. We had there, it was very clear that you have these technocratic tendencies that are also supported by AI, partly maybe justified, but partly also something that we should look at. What should be the limits of that? Yeah? Another asymmetry of power is at the global level, where there's more power in the countries that own AI, that benefit from AI, as opposed to countries that just have to follow, countries that are affected by AI, but not always have the decision power about its development, use, and regulation. And then finally, there's a kind of small power and micro power issue too, because we use AI in our own lives. For example, when we do sport or when we track our health, in the end, this is often connected with AI. And on the one hand, of course, this can help us, for example, to live more healthy, to do sport. But on the other hand, it means also, again, data are collected. And in particular here, the danger here is not so much that someone else uses it against me. It's also possible, but also that I start to see myself as a producer of data. That I start to see myself not so much more as a human, but as this quantified citizen. So this is dangerous because, as I said in my book, self-improvement can be also become very problematic when it's obsessive on the one hand, and also when technologies are then used to enhance the power of others and to change the view we have of ourselves. Finally, with power, we can ask, like, who is included? Because democracy, when we talk about it, we usually think only about humans, but we don't think about animals, we don't think about the environment. And that is important also for when we think about power and AI, that we also ask the question, what is the influence of AI and many other advanced technologies on the environment, on non-human animals? Because when we don't do that, we remain in this very anthropocentric kind of humanism and enlightenment, which has been very successful, but which is also today seen as, rightly seen as being very problematic, as putting always the human in the center, and has huge consequences for the world and the planet. So to conclude, I think AI has impact on democracy in various ways, because it threatens the values and principles that our liberal democracies are built on, but also because it, in the end, influences the power balances in our society, and the power issues that have to do with the inclusion and the exclusion of both humans and non-humans. I don't think that means that AI is something evil, that AI is something bad necessarily, but we have to think about its limits, and we have to also try to use it in a positive way, in a constructive way, by combining ethics and expertise from the technical sciences to build AI that is better, for society, that's more ethical and also more democratic. So we can move towards more democratic AI if we do more interdisciplinary work within academia and outside academia, if there's also more support for this kind of positive societal goals with technology. We can no longer afford it to leave technology alone, to leave the development of technology alone. We have to take responsibility for it. So, therefore, it is necessary to be involved in the development, but also to regulate the technology. And I think that since AI doesn't know borders, that we need more and more regulation at the supranational level, Some of this we already have at the in the EU, for example. Soon the AI Act will be implemented. And at the global level, I think we can also do something. Now, many people are skeptical about global governance in general because they think maybe it's not democratic. But then I say, let's make it democratic. Or they think it's unrealistic. Well, if you see that, for example, in the nuclear area, we had and have regulations that people more or less kept to. Of course, nowadays, a lot of this is unfortunately under pressure. But if you see that it's possible to do that, after the Second World War, for example, so I'm very optimistic about this. I think we can also have regulation at global level next to local and national. So AI has all these problems, but we can also do something about it, and we can make it more democratic and regulate it in a way that makes sense, namely at all levels, not only the national level, but also supranational. So there we need to collaborate, we need to have bilateral agreements, but we also need the multilateral approach. If you want to know more about this, there is the book which was translated in Spanish, and I hope that my forthcoming one on why AI undermines democracy and what to do about it, that it will be also translated in Spanish, and there will be more about democracy. Thank you very much.